Good afternoon, everyone. It's 1:02 p.m. We're going to call today's meeting of the Planning Advisory Committee to order. Could I have a motion to adopt the agenda as presented? Mayor Letham, seconder for that motion. Deputy Mayor O'Reilly, all in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Is there any declarations of pecuniary interest in today's meeting? Seeing none, we'll move right into the public meeting reports. So as required under the Planning Act, a public meeting is being held prior to the committee making a recommendation on these applications. All of today's public reports will go to the regular council meeting on September 21st. The purpose of this public hearing is to allow the committee to gather information on the applications before us, to hear those wishing to make oral submissions on applications, and to allow the committee to ask questions of the applicants, interested parties, and staff. Everyone who makes a presentation at this meeting is requested to provide their name for the public record. In the interest of time, the committee respectfully asks that you keep your presentation to no more than 5 minutes. When called, please turn on your video and turn off your mute and state your name. So the first application today that we're going to deal with is 3.1 on our agenda, Plan 2021-049, amend the Lindsay zoning bylaw 2000-75 at 71 Mount Hope Street, Lindsay. Lindsayian Walker.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, to committee members. I'm just going to share my screen here. So there, you should be able to see the location map now for the property in question, 71 Mount Hope Street. So further to the report, this application was circulated in accordance with the Planning Act. Signs were posted on the property, and all landowners within 120 meters were sent notice of this via mail. Since writing the report, I just this morning received one inquiry on this application from a landowner. That landowner is approximately 340 meters away from this property and had seen the sign on the property and just wanted to preserve their appeal rights. So they noted that and had a few questions which have been circulated to the committee members. Those questions specifically were around whether this proposed use would potentially impact that person's property, which does have, I understand, either a residential or institutional use on it. Being that it's more than 300 meters away, even the most sensitive industrial uses on this property would not impact on that person's property. So that should not be an issue. As well, the other inquiry was to whether they were going to meet all the setbacks required in the zoning bylaw. Based on the concept plan that you see before you here, the only reliefs that actually required to be sought for this were specifically to reduce the parking ratio for the garage, which they have justified in terms of looking at the existing business and the actual parking requirements that they need to use for the existing CarStar business that's going to be relocating here. And as well, the other component was that they have a loading space in the front yard, which is shown right here, which is in the driveway area accessing that parking. So it would be a loading space that they would be temporarily using. The Lindsay zoning bylaw just requires relief from that provision as well. Those are the two reliefs sought through this application. So I have responded to the inquirer, noting his questions and advising that I do not believe that there would be any concern with this impacting on his property. And as such, staff are respectfully recommending that we continue on with the recommendation in the report, that this be referred to council for approval with the bylaw as attached in the report. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ian. Committee, any questions of Ian at this point? Okay, looks pretty straightforward. Seeing none. Does the applicant, owner, or agent on behalf of the applicant, owner wish to speak to the application?
Good afternoon, members of the committee. For the record, my name's Emma Drake. I'm the planner on this file. The agent is here today as well, Trevor Day. We've reviewed Ian's report and we don't have any further comments, but we're here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Emma. And I'm assuming committee has no further questions from that. So we'll move right to, does anyone wish to speak to this application or matter? Is there anybody online who wishes to speak to the application? Third and final time, anybody wishing to speak to this application? Okay, seeing none. You've got a recommendation before you, committee. What are your wishes? Mayor Letham?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll give you the motion that report plan 2021-049, plan 377, part of lots 28 and 29, former town of Lindsay, Cross Realco Limited, application D06-2 2021-019 be received, that the zoning bylaw amendment substantially in the form attached as Appendix D to report plan 2021-049 be referred to council for approval and adoption, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute any documents required by the approval of this application.
Thank you. Seconded by Jason Willick. Any discussion? Seeing none, calling the question. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. That brings us to 3.2 on our agenda, Plan 2021-051. Amend the Fenland zoning bylaw 12-95 at 34 Arbor Street. David Harding.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, committee. So the owners are Barry and Janet McLean. Notice of the application was provided in accordance with the Planning Act. All registered property owners within 500 meters of the parcel were provided notice of the application, and a sign was posted on the property by the city's sign company. The subject property is on the south side of Sturgeon Lake. It contains a small strip of shoreline to the northwestern extremity, and an easement for a right-of-way running east-west, known as Arbor Street, serving addresses 2 to 32 Arbor Street, and another easement on the right side running north-south, known as Rustic Bay Drive. The shoreline strip contains a dwelling, and the balance of the lands are used for rural purposes. The subject property was subject to consent applications DO3-2020-046 to 055, which were granted by the Director of Development Services on October 19th of last year. The 10th application shifts Arbor Street approximately 30 meters to the south, and the other 9 applications add the lands between addresses 2 to 30 Arbor Street and the realigned Arbor Street to those respective parcels. The application is a condition of provisional consent for the 9 lot line adjustment applications that were granted, and the lands being added must be rezoned from agricultural to limited service residential exception 1 zone to match the zoning of the benefiting shoreline lots. The balance of the lands, which are being reduced in area from about 11.8 hectares to 10.9 hectares, are being proposed to be rezoned to a agricultural exception 27 zone in order to recognize the reduction in lot size. The application does not propose any new uses, and this is a general housekeeping amendment to reflect the new boundaries of the lots that are proposed. The application is consistent with the 2020 provincial policy statement and conforms with the 2019 growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe and the city's official plan. The application is proposed to enlarge the 9 shoreline residential lots, which will provide for more recreational amenity space, building envelope area, and septic system footprint, which is in keeping with our waterfront designation policies, which are to enhance service water quality by enhancing minimum lot sizes. And staff is of the opinion that this proposal represents good planning. So what I have on the overhead right now for committee is just in red the parcels that are, or the land that's going to be added to the shoreline residential lots. This is for the addresses closest to the eastern side of the parcel, and then we have the balance of Arbor Street on the western side as well, tying into 32 Arbor at its extremity. Since the writing of the report, there have been 2 letters of interest filed, one by Yun Peng, owner of 15 Emerald Street, and the other by Judy Cornish of 49 Rustic Bay Street, or Rustic Bay Drive rather. Staff do wish to reiterate that this application is not proposing new lot creation, but this is a lot line adjustment for 9 abutting shoreline residential lots. A letter of support was also recently filed this morning by the owners of 6 Arbor Street, which is one of the benefiting lot owners. Staff respectfully recommends that committee consider referring the zoning bylaw amendment application to council for approval. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks very much, David. Committee, any questions of David on this application? Okay, seeing none. Does the applicant, owner, or agent on behalf of the applicant owner wish to speak to this application? Okay, I believe there's nobody online. Does anyone wish to speak to the application? Is there anybody who wishes to speak to this application? Calling a third and final time, is there anybody wishing to speak to this application? All right, seeing and hearing none, you've got a recommendation before you, committee members. Deputy Mayor O'Reilly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move the report amended Fenland zoning bylaw 12-95 at 34 Arbor Street, McLean, be received as the zoning bylaw respecting application D06-2021-020 substantially in the form attached as Appendix D to report plan 2021-051 be approved for adoption by council, and the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute any documents and agreements required by the approval of this application.
Thanks. Seconded by Jason Willick. Any discussion? Wayne? Okay, we got you, Wade. Okay, calling the question. All in favor? That motion carries. Thank you. All right, at this point, that concludes this public meeting held under the Planning Act, and as such, it is now adjourned. So that now brings us to 4 on our agenda, deputations, which there is none. Hold one. Or sorry, there is a deputation, 4.1. Bob Clark. Go ahead, Bob.
Thank you. I'm really here on behalf of the owners of 153 Glenarm Road, Mr. Motera, and I'm merely here to answer questions with respect to any issues that the committee may have with respect to the planning report. I've had an opportunity to review the report, and I don't have any further comments to make on the report. I am satisfied with the report and with the conclusions.
Okay, thank you very much, Bob. Committee members, any questions of the deputant? Okay, seeing none, can we have a motion to receive that deputation? Wayne Brumwell, seconder. Councillor Seymour Fagan. Any discussion? All in favor? That motion carries. Thank you. Okay, correspondence. There is none. Regular and returned reports. Item 6.1, Plan 2021-050 to amend the Eldon zoning bylaw 94-14 at 152 Glenarm Road. Mark LaHaye.
Good afternoon, members of the Planning Advisory Committee. Notice of this application for a zoning bylaw amendment was originally given to each assessed landowner within 500 meters in all applicable departments and agencies, and a public meeting was held on June 2nd in 2021 in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act. The subject property is located in a prime agricultural area west of the hamlet of Argyle and is located on the south side of Glenarm Road. The owner has applied to rezone to change the zone category from an agricultural zone to an agricultural exception zone to permit an abattoir as a site-specific use. That zoning change would permit and facilitate the renovation of an existing vacant building for an abattoir, including ancillary retail, and would also permit an addition. As required through the pre-consultation process, a holding symbol is proposed to be placed on the zoning bylaw amendment to ensure the provision of site plan control for the proposed use. Various documents and plans were submitted by the applicant in support of the proposed amendment, including an agricultural impact assessment and minimum distance separation review that indicated that agricultural land impacts are minimized and no loss of production will be noted. The subject land area to be used for the abattoir is not agriculturally productive, and the use of this part of the farm for the agriculture-related use represents a benefit to the local and wider agricultural communities. The application would conform with the policies of the 2019 growth plan and be consistent with the provincial policy statement, and would generally conform with the policies of the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan. The application has been reviewed in consideration of the comments that have been received from circulated agencies, relevant provincial policies, the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan, and the Township of Eldon zoning bylaw. This proposed agricultural-related use is also in keeping with the guidelines on permitted uses in Ontario's prime agricultural areas. The proposed zoning amendment, together with a requirement for site plan approval, will appropriately permit an abattoir use, including ancillary retail and an addition, and facilitate the renovation of an existing building that was formerly used as an abattoir for this use on the subject property. In consideration of the comments contained in the report, provided there are no further issues or concerns, staff respectfully recommends that the proposed rezoning application be referred to Council for approval. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mark. Committee, any questions of Mark on this application? Okay, seeing none, you've got a recommendation. Whoops, sorry, Wayne, go ahead.
No, I'm just wondering how the waste is being stored. Once it's created, it's held somewhere for a period of time until it's picked up and disposed of. And I was wondering how it is actually stored in order to maintain air quality.
Through the chair, my understanding is there are specific collection tanks that will be used for that purpose and will be stored and emptied in accordance with all provincial regulations.
Any further questions of Mark at this time?
Thank you.
Okay, seeing none, there's a recommendation before committee. What is your wishes? Councillor Seymour Fagan? Seconder for Councillor Seymour Fagan's motion, Jason Willock. Any discussion? Seeing none, calling the question, all in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. That brings us to 6.2 on our agenda, ongoing planning application spreadsheet 2021 update. Acting Director Richard Hawley.
Good afternoon, Planning Committee. We have included the planning approval spreadsheet on as an item for discussion. We've also got Sherry Ray here with us as well. We've been working on updating that over the last little while. I think sort of if you take a look at the spreadsheet, I think what it shows that we've got a lot of activity happening in the City of Kawartha Lakes. You've got a paper copy though. nice carpentry here. I certainly can't see that from here, but. Yeah, that's right. So I think what the spreadsheet really shows is that we have a lot of activity happening in the city of Kawartha Lakes. A lot of it is in the official plan and zoning area, and a lot of it is to accommodate intensification. For us as planners, that's the exciting part because it shows that we're on the trend of we're starting to move upwards instead of always outwards. And that really shows that we're starting to fulfill provincial policy in a more holistic level. That really looks at building communities, and the more density we have, the less land we use, and it starts to really work for using our services more effectively. And it also looks at, helping to build a case for our transit system as well. A lot of mid-rise applications. We don't have a lot of new subdivision applications, although I suspect that will change once we get the tribute applications coming in. The other thing with COVID, we've had a huge amount of interest in our community from outside. And it's really, I think, reflective in a lot of the activity that we've got as well. I think in a lot of the consent and the minor variance activity, I think a lot of that's sort of really driven from outside of our community. People are coming in, purchasing properties, needing to make some changes or tweaks to the zoning bylaws, and sort of really emphasized through those bodies of work. Again, the biggest bodies of work for us really are official plan amendments and zoning, sort of either on their own or together, and the minor variances and consents. And that's really where the bulk of our work has been in the last little while. As well, I think the chart also shows that we don't have a lot of appeals coming out of a lot of our planning decisions. So I think we're doing something right from a planning perspective here. I mean, obviously, I think one of the things it does show, though, is that a lot of the applications are more complex, and we're not really hitting the timelines prescribed in the Planning Act for, say, subdivisions or official plan amendments or rezonings. I think it's a factor also of the complexity as well as the engagement. I think we're getting a lot of people that are engaged in a lot of these applications, and we're trying to deal with a lot of that in advance before it hits the floor here. So I think that's one of the explanations, or some of the explanations, why some of the applications are taking a bit longer. And I think that is evidenced in the chart. I mean, there's no way we're typically hitting 120 days for an official plan amendment. A lot of these applications are just very complex, and it just doesn't work. I think we've also had some pretty good working relationships with our external agencies through COVID as well. We've changed our processes to really focus more on electronic circulation, and I think that's helped us get better responses from agencies, because most of the agencies are all still working from home, and that sort of adds a slight layer of complexity depending on what your system is like at home that you can handle working on these things. But I think we've generally had really good success in terms of shifting over more to more of a digital platform. I think that's sort of my sort of high-level overview of the sheet. I mean, obviously, it's an ongoing exercise for us. It's a large process for us. There's a lot of time spent in terms of when we get applications, logging them into the system as well as into the spreadsheet, and as well as keeping it up to date. But I think this does provide us with a good sort of snapshot of where we're at this time. Just one of the things I would add is you sometimes see words, there's like a hashtag symbol, and then there's something that, to be assigned under review for completion. We do have quite a few of those, you'll probably have noticed. One of the challenges that we're having with our consultants is we spend a lot of time up front through the pre-consultation process. And what we're finding is that we're not getting the level of completeness that we would anticipate given how much time and effort we're spending on the pre-consultation process. So for example, in there it says all the different studies and reports that we need, as well as the number of copies. We frequently get applications submitted without the right studies or without the right copies or partial, or we get the lead consultant drops his stuff off and then the other sub-consultants are supposed to complete the submission. We have had quite a bit of problems with that especially in the last year. I'm gonna give people the benefit of the doubt and say it's perhaps COVID related, but in some cases, we will let the application sit for a period of time to let people augment them. But then when it gets too long, then we will typically send them back because it just sort of tells us that they're not quite organized. And to us, it really sort of, we don't want to have the applications sitting around because they sit around in our offices for 4 or 6 months. Obviously, we would like to deem them complete, and we only have so much real estate. And we really don't want someone to sort of say, listen, it's been in your office for 6 months, you got to deal with it. So if it's not complete, eventually we do send them back. So I did want to highlight that as one of the issues that we're dealing with. And you may have picked up on that. It says sort of a hashtag to be assigned under review for completion. So with that, that's sort of my overview of the chart. So I will open it up to any questions that you have.
Thanks, Richard. Deputy Mayor O'Reilly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to Richard. Thanks for the update. It's pretty obvious that we're a growing and busy community here. I guess first, is it possible to give an update on staff? I know there's a plan or two, that position that wasn't filled. I don't know the status. I realize this is operations. I'm just wondering if there's any update on that.
Sure. So we do have someone in mind now. There has been an interview, so I will leave it at that. But we're hopeful that position will now be filled. Yeah. I think for us that's a pretty key position. Yeah. To start to get the policy work going again. We've really had to, because of that staffing loss, we've had to put a lot of the policy development on hold. And so we're just basically right now just reacting to what we need to do to deal with the Ontario Land Tribunal matters that are before us, so the secondary plans. But once we get that person into the position, a person has indicated to us that they really want to work in policy as opposed to development, so that's been good for us. So that hopefully will be concluded shortly, as well as getting the third planner one. So once those people are back up to speed, then I think that will start to help us with getting through some of the backlog, especially in some of the areas, consents specifically.
Just on that point, I said I realize it is operations. Do you think that you're probably trying to explore all the options to deal with the backload? Because we well know as you look through here, you realize that maybe some of them you just expressed aren't complete applications or whatever. Right. But I mean, there's a sheer number of just backlogs because of the volume we have. Right. And the interest we have in our community. So, is staff looking at options or?
I will be exploring a couple of options with Ron in the next week. I have a meeting with them tomorrow, so I'll be looking to explore an option with Ron, perhaps a consulting contract to help with backlog. So that's one of the things that I'm going to be exploring with them.
Mayor Latham?
Thank you. Just a couple of quick questions, Richard. So sometimes in your chart, I notice that there'll be a line for a project under official plan amendment zoning bylaw, file closed, and then it shows up again under site plan, and I'm assuming that's just, you know, once they've done their zoning and official plan amendment, then it goes to site plan. I guess I'm wondering if there's a way to, there's a lot of information here, and I'm sure it's a lot to update. I'm wondering if there's a way to, should it be taken off the official plan and zoning amendment section when it gets to site plan so that, you know, it's not there, but we know it's there? I'm just, you know, when you're trying to update things, it seems we're adding information as an application progresses, but we're not taking anything off as it's completed through the process. It's just a thought. I don't know if that makes it more streamlined. And then the other, you know, I don't know how committee feels, but I think to me, the idea of this chart and keeping this updated for us was more for some of, I don't want to say the bigger projects, but I'm not sure I need a chart that shows me the consents, you know, and where they all are. And I know you're trying to keep them updated and stuff. And maybe it's just me, I could be wrong, but you know, I like to see some of the big projects, the subdivisions, you know, the condominium agreements, and obviously your official plan amendments and stuff moving forward, as opposed to consents and even minor variances, right? You know, I know we're delayed on some of those. There's a bit of a backlog, but, you know, I don't get a lot of calls from people that, you know, because their minor variance is a big issue. It's more, you know, some of the bigger, and I'm not speaking for the whole committee. Maybe they're quite happy to get all this information. I just, you know, I would certainly be happy with less information and just spread out a little bit more so that it's maybe a little bit easier to follow.
Sure.
As an update, but that's just my thought, and I don't know how the rest of the group feels, but, you know, before you start changing it, don't go by what I say.
I mean, certainly that's a huge body of work there, consents and minor variances. So if the committee wanted to, didn't necessarily need to see that information, that would certainly help us from a workload perspective. If you take a look at the number of files there, same amount of time to do a minor variance file as it is to do an OPA file, so.
Yeah, it's, you know, we've got a backlog, but we're spending time updating, you know, updating the file when we could be working on that backlog. And if we do get a call, any of us, regarding a minor variance or a consent, you know, we can email and get an update on it. And I'm not sure I need an update on all 100 of them, you know, or however many of them are there. And that's, again, just my opinion. I don't know if, you know, how the rest of the group feels, but just trying to simplify the whole process a little bit, but keep us updated at the same time. So.
Sure, and I mean, I think that, yes, I mean, I don't want to downplay consents and minor variances because they're definitely very important to somebody, but, you know, in the context of sort of the overall development amount, it's easy for me to just sort of find out what the status is of a minor variance. It's a little bit more difficult for one of the larger projects. So if that would be committee's wish to have those sort of removed from the chart, we're definitely okay with that.
Yep. I'd add to further to what Mayor Latham is saying. I don't have an issue with that personally. At some point, what I would like to see, though, is stuff like that, such as minor variances and consents, that there be something on our website, right, for the ease of those applications, right? Because especially with the backlog, I do get phone calls about consent, and it's purely based on my area because it's 90% agriculture and it's farm consolidations and everything. And to those guys, it's a big deal, right? Because they're talking about $1 million deals. They're buying farms for $1 million, $2 million or whatever. And until the consent's done and things are changed around, it's financing, it's stuff that's not in their names, right? And ease for them to see where those projects are in the system And if there's a way that they don't always have to phone in, which I know is a drain on the system as well, I think just benefits everybody. So at some point, if we can get to something like that, I think that's beneficial for everybody. But is there any other comments from committee on Jason?
If I may, from my perspective, because I don't see anything from the consents. When I see this chart, I can see the volume of work that the planning department does, and knowing that there's a lack of bodies, there's only so much time and resource. So if I only saw what we would see at this meeting, I wouldn't know the volume of work, and I would see half the work, where everyone else seeing consents and changes, they see double the workload. So as a manager, I would rather see everything on one spreadsheet than have to see double. And then if everything, my perception is when I see this, I can look through and see who's doing what. So from Richard's perspective, I can see where I would want it all together, right? Because you can just open up one document and see who's doing what, as opposed to saying who's here and who's here if you have to share workload. So I can see the value of having it on one, but then when it's presented here, it's like, here's the whole thing if you wish to see it, but this is for this meeting. And then when it goes to your, I don't know what the other committee's called, it's shown as that section, and here's the rest of it. Because, like, I know that the concerns that I've always had are the delays of getting stuff here, but it's also, if there's one gentleman that has 15 consents in one major application, then you can see why the workload. So that's why I like to see this as, I know what the planning department's doing as a whole now.
Wayne, I think or Mike, you had your hand up there. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I tried to go through as much of the report as I could, and so I highlighted a few things, and then I just ballparked a couple of others. One of my concerns or questions, I guess, is a great number of these applications in process don't seem to be updated. On the first page, I just looked at a few of them that I'm familiar with or that have come to our committee prior to this, such as the Royal Cedar Road. There's just the one comment back from 2020 about a public meeting, and I know we had some problems about the different borders, that they wanted to. There were some issues with the neighbors. I know the one for the this one here. It's hard to read. It's so small. For Loblaws. That it says it's originally handed to Jane Wong transferred, but it's got the last comment is from the 9th of September 2020, and I drove by there and they seem to be clearing the lot, so there seems to be something happening. So the Home Hardware in Fenelon Falls, it's been delayed, and there's some issues here, and so I just wonder about the effectiveness and the efficiency of the report. If it's not up to date, I realize that it's an Excel spreadsheet, so we don't have access to Excel, but the planners do and others do, and so you can sort these things out. But I kind of wonder, we talked about the level of completion, and I know I've heard in the last little while that people have submitted their information that was required, and they got a letter back 5 weeks later saying, "Oh, here's the reason that we're not agreeing with this." So I talk about backlogs and levels of completion. I just wonder, this report came out of the recovery task force, pandemic recovery task force, and I just wonder, Richard, do you think it's effective as to what it's doing? Do you think you're improving service? Do you think that this is a way of moving forward?
Thank you, Mike. I mean, I think the chart provides. I mean, if I take a look at the chart, I mean, as a manager, I know what most planners are working on, and I'm involved to some extent, with assisting planners on a number of projects. I mean, it is sometimes good to have some of this information, but I think what we are sort of long-term trying to do is sort of make SharePoint more of an effective tool for us to use. There's the one thing that I did notice when I looked through this is different planners have different styles in how they update things. And so then if the style isn't consistent, then you sort of, some people put all the dates in and others will just say bylaw passed, right? So then I don't really know. So without having that consistency across, it sometimes is a bit of it can be a bit of a problem. I mean, often what I will do is, I know what projects, if I get an email on a project from someone from outside, I probably, either know the information or I'll just ask the planner for a quick update on it. Because depending on how current this chart is, it's probably better just to sort of tap the planner on the shoulder and say, by the way, David, where is this application at? And David gets back to me and tells me. So, I mean, I will say it is the chart doing the upgrade it is a lot of work, but it's something that we were asked to do. So we are doing it as part of the recovery task force request. So.
Okay. Wayne, go ahead.
Richard, is one of the purposes of this document coming to the committee, the document is basically a management document, but I can see it as a manpower planning issue for the committee as to whether the committee can handle this level of issues, and more importantly, do we have enough staff to manage these issues? Like with any organization, you have management issues and you have the big issues that go to the board of directors. And I see this committee more like a board of directors that should be addressing the major issues coming out of this report, not particularly all the individual data that's on the report. So my question would be, does this report indicate that we're shy of staff to handle this workload, et cetera, et cetera? Is that one of the purposes of this report?
We are constantly monitoring our staffing levels vis-a-vis what our workload is. I mean, I've been here for 13 years now. I feel that the applications are becoming more complex than they have been in the past, sort of overall. And I think we've really had an increase in volume, especially during the COVID period as well. That's really been evident both on the applications that we're dealing with, as well as on the types of applications, as well as especially on phone calls. The chart doesn't really show the phone calls that we're dealing with, but those have been really sort of the increases. I mean, we're not necessarily using this chart from that perspective, but I think we sort of do monitor sort of overall what our workload pressures are. So, but it is, we have experienced a substantial increase, and I think we will be very busy for the foreseeable future, especially with some of the big applications that we are anticipating receiving. The other part of this that I think is kind of buried, because it's not necessarily an application, but it's our policy work. And the policy work, you have to have good policy work done so that you can get good development work done later on. And that's really crucial. So there's a number of policy initiatives that are there and highlighted. So a lot of our official plan work, our rural zoning bylaw work, and some of the other, we have done a number of policy initiatives like source water protection, the accessory residential units, things like that. So I think those have helped us sort of overall, but I think a lot of times when we just talk about development, the policy piece gets lost, and I really don't want to lose sight of that, because you need to have good policy to get good development out at the end, so.
Okay. Any further questions, Mayor Latham?
Yeah, just a couple of quick comments. First, I think this chart has value. I really do. I'm just not sure we're using it for the value that it could be. And to Mike's point earlier, you know, when you go to Fieldgate in Loblaws and you see on the zoning and official plan amendment, Mike, it shows June of 2020. But to my earlier point, when you go to the site plan, page 57, it shows Fieldgate there as, sorry, it's small, drafting agreement plans complete. So, you know, and that's my point. I mean, there's good information here. It's just, I'm wondering if there's a better format that this chart could be in, and if there's an easier way to keep it updated. I don't think any of our goal is for, you know, for you and Sherry to sit, you know, a week before planning committee every couple months and spend an afternoon or a day or however long this takes to update it. I think the goal was each planner with their file, you know, if there's a format this could be, what is this, a spreadsheet? Is that what you call this?
Yeah.
If there's a format this could be in that, I don't know, at the end of every week or a couple weeks, you know, the planner goes in and just updates their files. I don't know, you know, if a planner has 10 or 12 files, maybe they have 50. I don't want to underestimate what they're working on, but you know, if a quick, and I don't mean having to go in and log into it. I'm just wondering if there's a better format that it could be put in that makes it simpler to keep up to date, or when a process is passed, you know, it's as simple as just logging on and boom, then it's done, and you don't have to dedicate a certain time every so months to go through and update everything.
Right.
And then, you know, I don't think our goal is to create extra work. It's just to use it as a vehicle, again, to show the scope of work of what we're dealing with. Manpower issue, to Wayne's point. I mean, there's a lot of things that we can get out of this.
Yep.
And even as much as, you know, I have a question on a file, I can look on this and see who the planner is. And then I don't have to bother you or Sherry and say, or Leah, you know, and say, who's the planner on this? I want to get an update on it. I mean, you know, it's here. And if the update here doesn't tell me the information, then a quick email, you know, sort of eliminates that as well. And I think for councillors and even some of the residents, the idea was, you know, they can see their file being updated as well without us having to reach out to planners. So I don't have a solution for you. I'm just wondering if I think there's value to this. I'm not sure we're getting the value of it. I think we're just doing it. It's a pain in the neck to you guys right now to do it, is what I'm hearing. And I'm not sure we're getting the true value out of it. But I think there's value here. We just need to figure out a better way to do it.
Right.
You know.
I think that's, and to your point, Mayor Latham, I will be sitting down with staff to sort of re-look at this format. There's a lot of data fields in here, and I'm not necessarily sure that that maybe all of them are necessary. But I also, you know, maybe there's a way to sort of, you know, if it gets highlighted or shaded in say teal or something, it means the file is closed, and then it's easier to read, or we just take them off altogether. And say an OPA ZBA has gone to a site plan, we do a reference, an XREF for those files, but they get taken off on the OPA and ZBA. So.
And I mean, the other thing is sometimes the language. When I'm looking at an official plan amendment and I see file closed, and I'm like, what does that mean? They're gone? You know, like it's done?
Okay,
Or
yeah.
does that mean it's complete?
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's complete. It's now gone on to site plan, right? And it's just,
Right.
and it's not just me. I have probably a better understanding of planning now than you know, somebody else might. But somebody looking at it, it's just, you know, or off to site plan, and then at least, you know, go to the site plan section and there's the rest of the file, you know, as opposed to just, to Mike's point earlier, is having it listed in different locations and going, it says file closed, but they're out there digging a hole.
Yeah.
So that doesn't make sense, right?
Yep.
So then and that's what I mean by maybe simplifying, if there's a way to simplify it information-wise a little bit, so.
And it also goes to the different styles that some of the planners have, and I noticed that when I was looking through it as well, so. Okay, yep.
as part of that, I wonder too if IT was involved in that conversation, if there isn't some way of them helping or assisting to streamline that and maybe automate some of those processes, right? As, you know, to your point, if you tag something, if you were to tag it, is there a way to automatically pull it out so that you're not having to go back and physically remove it, right? And save some time.
Can I, just final comments, I think we can get there. I just, you know, I don't think we need to have the perfect chart tomorrow. I just think we need to review it, figure out how we can do it better, what do we need, what don't we need, and let's keep having this discussion, and maybe a year from now, or 6 months from now, or 2 years from now, we've got the exact chart at the value, you know, that it was intended to be, because I think that the intent is there, the value's there. I'm just not sure we've got it where it should be to everybody's benefit, so it's not creating a ton of work for you guys and giving us way too much information in what we were really looking for, or to Andrew's point, a resident is looking for to see where their consent is. So I think we just need to sort of, let's have this conversation a little bit more often, and maybe with some of our feedback and some of the changes you're making, maybe over time we'll get there.
Okay.
Work toward it, so that's it.
Councillor Seymour Fagan.
Yes, thank you. Through you. What about maybe speaking to Brenda Stonehouse? Because I know when I've worked on different projects with different partners, we use like Teams. We use all sorts of different software that we can all access, and we can all add, you know, or change whatever it might be, an Excel spreadsheet or something. So everybody has access to it, so all the planners, they just update on their own, but then everybody sees it. So I don't know, Brenda probably knows what she's doing with that kind of thing.
Okay.
Sure, so currently the spreadsheet is in, it's in SharePoint, and there are a number of people that have access to it, to view it, but not to change it. So the planners can access it to change it, but I think I'd have to check to see who has the permissions to go in and take a look at it. So for example, if members of council wanted to go in and take a look at it as a read-only document to sort of see what the status is, so we can take a look at that. Yeah.
Okay. Any further questions or discussion on the spreadsheet? Go ahead, Mike.
Just further to the last point, could you include the members of the Planning Advisory Committee that can go in and have a look so that we can keep ourselves updated, and then we don't have to go through 21 pages? It was a little tiny print. I had trouble with that.
We'll see how we do that. We'll have to try to figure something out to see how you can, you know, get regular updates of it as well. Then we'll have to speak with IT about that. Okay.
Yep. Okay. So we've got a motion to receive the chart and Richard's presentation from Mayor Latham. Is there a seconder for that motion? Jason Willick. Any discussion? Calling the question, all in favor? That carries. Thank you. And that brings us to the end of our agenda today. Would somebody like to make a motion for adjournment? Councillor Seymour Fagan, seconded by Wayne Brumwell. All in favor? That motion carries. Thanks very much, everybody. Have a great afternoon.